everybody, to the Nerdy Magical Girl podcast. I'm your host, Milady Confetti, and today I'm here with Megan Hutchinson. I recently played season A Letter to the Future, and I reached out to y'all on Twitter to do an interview with the devs, and here you are. Could you
Yeah.
explain a little bit what you do, like what your role is, and introduce yourself for the folks who are listening and watching?
Yeah, cool. I am a narrative designer. Originally, I started with the team as their community manager. And I did that for about a year. And then I said that I'd be really interested in doing some more writing and working on the game because I was just seeing all this beautiful work coming out. And I was like, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Can I do that? And I have a really lovely manager, Jane, and she was like, I will teach you game development.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she is honestly like my hero, and I love her because she's like, you've never touched Unreal before, like you've done all your training because I did like a master's in game development, so I like had all the theoretical where I'm like, I
Yeah.
understand what a game looks like
Yeah.
and the theories behind it. I don't know how to make one.
Yeah.
And she would like do little diagrams for me on like how interactions were supposed to work. So she would be like, here's a dialogue. So when someone walks up to this interaction, it'll pop up the interaction node, and then you do the certain click buttons. And she's like showing me all this, and she's drawing me diagrams, and she's like, this is how you do it. Now go into Unreal and do it. And then I would come back to her and I'd be like, I broke it. And you fixed it. And after I did that like once or twice, she'd be like, no, you got to fix it yourself. And then I'd be like, but how?
Yeah. How does the thing work? I broke it.
So, like the easiest way for me to explain like things that I worked on is like at the beginning of the game, you interact with Mr. Lotto,
Mm-hmm.
who's like the little the little dog, and that's one of the things that I initially broke because it wasn't. Yeah, I broke Mr.
No.
Lotto. I broke him because we were trying to like change the interaction around so that when Estelle interacted with it, she would only say like the voice line once.
Yeah.
So that every time you picked it up, it wasn't like blah, 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 blah. So she seemed more realistic as a human being.
Right.
And because of that, I accidentally took away Mr. Lotto's voice.
Oh
And then I brought him
no.
back. And then he just kept being like, I'm tired. And I'm like, I'm same, buddy. Same.
Sometimes I wish video games had gag reels or blooper reels, because I feel like after everything, like I feel like that would have been like really interesting to see.
Oh my god, if there was just someone over my shoulder being like, haha, now we will wait until she screws up. I'm tired. Yeah, so basically what I do in narrative design is I work with Kevin, who's our writer, and I work with Sebastian, who's like the head of the design work.
Yeah.
And we go back and forth between the two and we say, okay, here's the design aspects that we want in the game. Here's the writing aspects we want in the game. How do we make them work together?
Yeah.
And a big part of that was like rejigging the journal when we were doing it and making it so that you could put stuff in it, which was really cool because originally we were like designing it so that it just like automatically populated and you didn't have that scrapbooking feature.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's like a big part of the storytelling where we're like, okay, we want to introduce the voice lines in it and we want to have those opportunities to be able to have people talk about the story and put in the bits that are important to them, which also highlights like using the camera and using the tools that were made by the design team and working and putting those together.
Yeah. Because one thing, because I did the initial, because I don't know if I have to fully disclose this, but I will so I don't get sued. But I was sponsored to do the stream and do the posting. This is not sponsored, but that was. But I don't know, because there's this whole like thing going on TikTok about like content creators not disclosing things. But I'm like, I disclose when I do my stuff because I don't got money to be sued by the FTC. So, but this is not sponsored. We're just having a conversation. But one thing I got in the comments of like my TikTok and my Instagram post was just how unique the design is for this game. Like it really wasn't like a lot of people like couldn't even compare it to anything. So I think what was the inspiration for having the story be driven in such a way through taking photos and, you know, through honestly through poetry. I felt like it was a lot of poetry that was being, you know,
Mhm.
pushed my way, which was absolutely beautiful. So what was the inspiration behind that?
So Kevin, who's our writer, is a big traveler. And like a lot of people on the team are really big travelers. And Kevin started writing it while he was hitchhiking.
Oh,
So that's part of the reason why he wanted to do like the photographs and the recording and meeting people and like becoming parts of their lives for a moment.
was he
And
safe hitchhiking? I haven't heard.
yeah,
Okay. So it's like, is Kevin okay? Do we
I
need to
will
call Kevin?
say I will say there is some benefits there with male privilege with being able to hitchhike.
Yeah.
I personally would never
Yeah.
because
No.
I like living.
Exactly.
Uh, but he has like hitchhiked in Asia with a lot of really good friends. So he had like a good group of people. So he was
Okay.
safe. Kevin is safe. He's fine.
Okay.
He's back in Montreal with his girlfriend and everything's. I saw him last week, guys.
All
He is
right.
doing okay. um yeah, so that was like a big part of it was like how do you capture things to like remember it.
Yeah.
And like with myself, it was really important to have that photo aspect because I'm trained as a photographer before like I got into video games,
Oh, that's
and I
cool.
really love traveling. So like I've been to New Zealand and I've been to Iceland, and Iceland always stuck out to me because there's such history in the places you go with elves and hidden people where the roads are actually like twisted and turning because they're avoiding elf homes, which are like specific rocks. And they have
Okay.
beliefs that if you move a rock, then the
You're
elves will
moving.
come and play tricks on you.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
So it
Not
has
the
like,
not getting played tricks part, like the lore.
no, 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 no.
Please, please, elves, leave me alone. I didn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so cute to me and like amazing that you can like go and like look at something and be like, wow, this is beautiful, but also there's levels of culture to it that you only learn from then talking to people
Right.
and learning about it.
Right.
Which was a big part of like putting in like those photo aspects and then showing them to the troll at the end and like taking pictures of like Matora's work and being like, we're gonna save it so that it can make it its way out of the valley. And all those like photography moments where we're like, we're going to record it and save it and move it forward as like part of your culture in this book. And with like the recordings, it's for me the big inspiration was deep listening,
Mm-hmm.
and going and having like not an egocentric like what do I sound like, but what does the world sound like
Yeah,
around us, and like having that moment to like step back and see that things are bigger than ourselves.
definitely.
Mhm.
I got that sense a lot. I don't know. I know somebody well from your Twitch account was watching my stream. I don't know who. But I know like I know I was very there were a lot of moments because I talk a lot during live streaming because you typically have to. But
Mhm.
when I was going back and watching my playthrough, there was a lot of times where I was just silent for like sometimes for like straight 10 minutes. I never do that. And I think it's because like you get so immersed and drawn into the environment that you want to observe everything. And if like I'm constantly speaking over it, like I'm naturally like that in person, like I'm not going to be the person that's talking the most in a room, which is very shocking when you like it's like, "Oh, I Twitch stream for a life or I make content for a life," but like in real life like I'm very quiet.
Mhm.
Because I just want to observe and I want to take things in. And I love that the game like really encouraged that. And I was just like, and I got like, I snapped back a few times, like, I am so sorry, y'all. Like, I promise I'm here. But I come to find out, chat was doing there, like like even chat side, really, no, we're here too. We're just like taking all of this in because even like during the scenic routes, like when you're on the bike, like the
Mhm.
one big hill that you go down, it's just like the wind like picks up and it just like brings you to like the whole like scene of like the ocean. And I'm just like, this is beautiful. I think I might have cried then too. Uh,
It's so cool
it
and so
is.
pretty.
It is. One thing you were talking about, you know, bringing the characters to life and talking about their culture. One thing right off the bat. So we were like a smooth like 3 minutes into the game, and I was already in tears. Um, whoever was on the account, I think I made them laugh because I said, "It's Black History Month and you making me cry and run my Fenty? How dare you? I'm in tears right now." By the way, Fenty doesn't run like that. I just be saying that. Like Fenty's actually very good. It doesn't run if you cry. But you know, the one thing, like, you just felt like the fullness of like the main character and like the mother's relationship. Like I felt like I could like smell the house. Like, and I know this is very strange to say because like you're playing the game, but like I just felt so much love into one like 2-bedroom space. Could you explain a little bit more like what went into bringing the characters in this game to life and having that feeling, that well-rounded feeling?
Well, the mother scene always made like that was the big one for us where we had like a pillar of called the tier
Okay.
where we were like we want people to have like not cry, but we're like if they cry great, but we want them to have like that emotional impact as they're playing the game of like the idea of like leaving your own family
Yeah.
and like having this story of like this upbringing of like two people who are very very close together, um who are separating for like the greater good and like to do an adventure, and like we didn't want it to feel like the Pokemon start of the
Yeah.
game. Like that was the biggest fear when we were going into it, where I was like, all right, you've turned 12, get out.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
So that was like our biggest fear because we're like, we don't want the mom to be like, we want the mom to be like a supportive mother who's not like clingy and not like wants like holding you back, but is in pain that you're leaving. Like we
Yeah.
wanted to demonstrate that healthy relationship.
Yeah.
But as like Kevin reworked the lines and we reworked the pacing, and like we the whole time that I was there, it was always working on this amulet together as like the last thing that a mom can do to make sure that you're okay before you leave. And while we were working on this, I was about to leave home to move to Montreal.
Wow.
And there was a lot of times where like my parents were like, do you have everything? Do you know what you want? Do you know where you're living? Make sure that you live in a house that's like the ladders can reach for the fire trucks.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like so we wanted to like incorporate those feelings with it, but still like having that let go
Yes.
and being like, okay, I've done everything I can.
Yeah.
And I prepared my child for the outside world.
Yeah.
And then as like we did the first like voice actor in, and originally it was our producer who voiced it, and she is a mom with like adorable children, and she like just put her whole heart into it, and we were like, oh my god, the mom is alive.
Yeah.
And then when the next voice actor came in, we were like, what?
There's the tears. There it is. See? See? It was right to cry. See?
Yeah, and like the hug is just so nice because like when it first got animated, it was just like the blocking was like
Yeah.
like the very static like here's the hug, okay, we did it. But then when it got more and more alive and more powerful, like it was like they breathed life into it, the animation
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
And it just was like everything was falling into place and I was so happy with it. And then the final result, we were like, oh my god,
Yeah.
don't leave mom, don't leave mom. And then in the studio when we were doing the testing, I don't know if you picked up the flowers.
I did not pick up the flowers.
Okay. We were watching people to see if they were going to pick up the flowers because the mom like tells a story about like missing her husband. And like she
Oh.
would like he would collect the flowers from the cliffs that he climbed and bring them back for her.
Aw.
And she says, I can't lose this one. And you have this choice to say the stronger the memory, the stronger the pendant, or you're like, Mom, no, I'll put it away.
I would have put it away.
Yeah, that's what we all do. So we would just like sit there and we'd watch the playtesters and we're like, please put it away. Please put it away. Please don't take this one.
Yeah.
And I love that too because it puts like more dimension to the mother
Yeah.
instead of just like she's just a mom.
Yeah.
It's like she was a woman who was in love, who had fears about her daughter growing up and living to be old enough to be okay.
Yeah.
And like it just has all these layers with the items in the room, which also like plays into hauntology, which is like, it sounds very creepy, but it's like the idea that things carry memories and ghosts of the past.
Yeah.
So it's like everything you see, everything you touch, you can sort of have attributions to them where you're like, this is from this part of my life.
Yeah.
And that's what that room plays with, is how can we make people feel full with their memories in a very natural way,
Yeah.
instead of just Expedition being like, I'm your mom, get it.
Yeah, the Pokemon experience is a perfect analogy for that, because I do feel a little kicked out. I'm like, okay. And then as soon as you come home to get like, you know, like, oh, you're home, let me heal your Pokemon. Okay, get out again. Like, mom's busy. um,
Like mom's just like, you look tired, and I'm like,
well, I've been traveling on foot for like ever. You kicked me out at 12.
do you not see my new outfit? I had to defeat so many gym leaders to afford this.
I like, so the mother daughter scene, like that was, I think, what really set the pace for me with everything. And I love the fact that when you talked about the mother, that she wasn't just a character, she was somebody with hopes, with dreams, with a past, who loved, who has fears and all those things. And one thing I personally like want to see, and I talk about this a lot, I want to see like more of that with Black characters, because often when we are put in video games, it's like stereotypical, or you know, that love is not given. And that's one thing I said like in the beginning of the stream a lot. I said I feel the love in this game, and I think it's even more compounded because the two main characters, well, the mom and daughter, were dark-skinned Black women. And I never see dark-skinned Black women ever. Like, if I see, sometimes we see Black women, but like to have like that extra element of just like I felt like it was like me and my mom. You know what I mean? So I was just like, it was like that extra layer of just care. And I'm like, and also these are like full blown human beings. Like, I'm sure like there could probably be books and stuff written about the mom. Um, and speaking on like, well, my mother, like her philosophy always is, because I'm her only child, is you need to grow with your kid. Not shelter them, not be, what do they call them, bulldozer parents, not move all the obstacles out of the way so your kid can have a smooth life. You have to grow with your kid. You know, help them when they face obstacles, but also give them the tools to be able to face things by themselves. And I definitely sense that in that mother, which was like, I think that's what really just like driven a lot of the emotions of why I was crying for the first 3 minutes of the game. Because I'm just like, that's me and my mom. And like, to be able to say that, like, it doesn't happen often. And if it does, there's usually like caveats. It's like, okay, I can play this, but like this character is a raging stereotype. This doesn't feel good. And that was the one thing that I think that made me the most emotional, because it just felt like a warm hug, and like people cared. So that's I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not gonna cry again because makeup is slayed today, but I just wanted to say, you know, that if I couldn't have elaborated during the stream, I definitely wanted to elaborate it here, because that just touched my soul.
Now I'm gonna cry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It makes me really happy, because it's just like, it just like, people deserve this, and they deserve to see themselves in games,
Yeah.
and to have these feelings that you're showing, because if we don't see ourselves in games, then we don't see ourselves in the possibility of adventure.
Yeah.
And of like something amazing and something magical.
Yeah. I am a huge like proponent, like, because that's the reason why I really like D&D. I really got into it because I felt like, and I, you know, I'll speak for myself. I really felt like in fantasy, Black people didn't exist. Like, I'm just like, I always like look for Black women like in fantasies, or like who aren't like, again, like when you get stereotypical, and I'm just like, I know what that writer's room looked like. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like you were a part of the process. You were even like an afterthought, or if we're put in there, we're killed off first. And that's why like I want to see more things like this, because this was just, it was just a beautiful narrative game, and the main character just happened to be a dark-skinned Black woman. Like that, it's so simple. Or like when you look at like Miles Morales, like he's Spider-Man, but it's also, his story is very much a coming of age story, just like Peter Parker. I mean, of course he faces different things because he does live in New York, and you know, he is, you know, Black and Puerto Rican, but that part that's I want to see more of that. And it's just like I feel like this game is just hopefully kick something off. Hopefully put in the minds of industry folks. And one, have Black people in the writing room, but also look at what can be done when you put some tender love and care into something and you don't rely on stereotypes like that. Like that is like the big thing I took from this game. Now I'm gonna
Yeah.
cry. Sorry.
Well,
I have tissues though. I am prepared. I'm prepared.
I
I have
have them
tissues.
too.
See, you showed up prepared.
You did show up prepared. Oh, I love it so much because it's just like, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. When this one thing, because I think what also like drove a lot of the emotions home, you know, regardless of like who you were interacting with, are the moments of stillness that the game kind of made you sit with and reflect in that moment. So, you know, you would talk to a character and then, you know, whether they tell their stories, whether they tell their stories or whatever they tell you, like there was a moment of there's a lot of pauses and a lot of like
Mhm.
moments to just sit and just reflect or ride your bike somewhere. Really, what like kind of, because that's something, because I feel like I had this in psychology in my psych class, but you talk about like how silence is a tool. And it's not necessarily a tool I see in video games, because usually you have the people talk or you show what you want to bring on, not necessarily silence or nothingness. So can you tell me how like you navigate that tool of silence when creating a game like this, especially one that's just so visual?
Mhm. Um, for me, it's that silence opens up possibility where we're not pushing people in a certain direction.
Yeah.
We're not asking them to think about XYZ. We're not forcing them to go to this place or that place. Like I worked on Koshi's tour, and that was like the big one that I worked on, where
Yeah.
I wanted players like we were like, yeah, we want people to follow this little boy,
Yeah.
but we didn't want him like yelling things back at you
Yeah.
and like trying to have a conversation with you while you were riding your bike, which I find that like a lot of NPC follow quests do, where they're like, here's a bunch of information that we're going to force you to take
Yeah.
while we're going from point A to point B so you don't get bored.
Yeah.
But the whole point of the game is you're seeing this place for the first time, and it's not a fast paced game. Like, we don't have to entertain you every second of it
Yeah.
because you're supposed to be looking for those moments and looking for those things to sort of pique your interest. And as developers, we didn't want to like shove it on you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then we have like these emotional stories where like Koshi's like collecting things so he can go
Yeah.
see his father for the last time.
Yeah.
And we wanted it to be like a little bit of a surprise where you're just seeing the valley through this boy's eyes where he grew up.
Yeah.
And like just seeing the path that he takes, taking those turns, trying to follow him because he can be difficult to follow because he's little. But just like giving that space to a child to be listened to
Yes.
and to be followed and to be the leader.
Yeah.
So we didn't want you to like try and prod for more that he wasn't ready to give you yet.
Yeah.
Which I find like I used to work with children. I worked with children for 10 years. Um, and most of the time it's people being like, I want you to tell me about XYZ
Yeah.
instead of just taking time to listen to like their story and what piques their interest.
Yeah.
So that was another one of my favorite things about Estelle is that she's very comfortable with silence
Yes.
in these situations and waiting for people to open up instead of saying like, oh, I'm here to invade your life.
Yeah.
Tell me everything, and overwhelming people in a time where they're dealing with a lot.
Yeah. Because I think like going from the mother, sorry, I don't remember everybody's name. I feel so
That's
bad.
totally
But
fine.
Kochi's mother, and
Yeah.
you know, where you did kind of have to, you didn't have that space or that stillness to reflect. You kind of had to make a choice. Now that one threw me off because I was just like, oh, I have to like choose which book she keeps or which art piece she keeps. I'm like, I don't think I should. I'm a stranger. I feel like I shouldn't be making these choices. And then I did, and I felt guilty every single time because I'm like, who
Mhm.
am I to make these decisions? I'm like, I'm glad you trust me, but then going to Kochi's tour and just, you know, experiencing the valley. And I wasn't expecting the end of the tour to be at the grave of his father. I was not expecting that. And I think I just let go of the controller and just sat there with that. Cause like I know like I'm, dealing with grief myself. And that's just like I'm like, it just really had like a powerful impact. But it was such a like when it was a choice of do I share what I told him or do I not, or do I keep it private? And I chose to keep it private because one, I probably would have broke down on stream because it probably would have something so deep and insightful. And I'm like, all right, I gotta go, y'all. Sorry, I gotta cut the stream short. But just also like respecting Kochi just as a whole person. Like, yes, he is a child, but child, he has his experiences and this is how he has experienced or seen the world. And like you said, being a leader and being a champion of his own narrative, that really had an impact. I know, as me specifically, as I know, I'm dealing with grief, so like I'm just like, wow, okay. And I think like the poem in the beginning, or I keep calling it poetry because it just felt like poetry. It spoke to my soul. But the one where so like lays down and says,
Oh
feel
yeah.
your ancestors pushing it. I was just like, whew. And then the end, I was like, okay. This game's tearing me up. It's coming for me. I you should have said season a letter to Milady Confetti. That just would have been fine. If you just want to rename it, you could have just did that.
You should have been with us when we were trying to figure out the subtitle.
Next time.
We'll call you up.
Yeah. I are there any like projects or anything like that like to do like with this story? I know it's pretty much done. Like it had a period. Well, I felt like it had a period at the end of the sentence. I like things that end. But is there more that you think that you could do with season?
There's more I want to do with season. Then there's more that I believe the writer wants to do with season in the world of season.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure what will come back next.
Yeah.
Then and I can't really say what will come next.
All those darn NDAs.
Ah, darn it. I can say that for me, I love season and I love seeing games with like season because I'm working on a PhD right now.
Ooh, bless.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's very cool. And
are you okay? Wait, like, are you tired? No wonder you're tired. You working on a PhD.
I'm tired. I need to get that in like a button form. Like I need a Mr. Lotto that doesn't have like the 3, 2, 1. It just has the I'm tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I look at games that study grief and look at grief. Because when I was like looking at Koshi's story, it's sort of what I would want to say to my grandfather and do with my grandfather when he died.
Yeah.
Is be able to take people around his farm and have those quiet moments and show them and then just be there. And I want to see more experiences like that.
Yeah.
Of being able to reflect on our own grief in a safe space.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like my overall goal is to sort of make more games like that where we can do that. But yeah, I am a little tired.
What's your PhD in?
I study video games.
Okay.
At Concordia. And my specialty is in death and grieving. Okay. And I got into that because I used to work at a hospital with children who unfortunately were terminal. And with that, I got interested in how people don't really know how to talk about death with children.
Yeah.
A big part of that was like watching parents sort of struggle with, one, the fact that their children are sick.
Yeah.
2, that their children are terminal. And 3, that their children don't understand what that means.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of studies that show that like parents don't know how to have those conversations and it stresses them out and then it stresses the children out.
Yeah.
So psychologists then have difficulty with how do you start those conversations without a complete blow up of tears.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like my hope one day is that we can make games that could be utilized in those aspects. Yeah. Of something that you could play together with your family and be able to sort of have a discussion about what grief is. Yeah. And what then moving forward is, or that people who might have lost their father will play season and feel sort of relatable of having that emptiness and having that sort of like ghosts in the poetry where they're still cheering you on and you still have those memories
Yeah.
to help you push forward.
Yeah.
But how does that feel having that weigh on you? So
I know like shows like Sesame Street have tried to like tackle things like that. I know like my first experience, like as far as media is concerned, with like a character that was beloved that died was Tara from Teen Titans.
ugh,
Um and I know like in the OG, I'm not Titans Go, y'all. Teen Titans, period. Um when she did die, and then like in a weirdly in the next season, like her doppelganger was there or something. I
yeah.
don't know what that was about, but when she did die, like I was just like, did she just like like I didn't even know what to make of it. I was just like, that doesn't happen. She's a
Mhm.
superhero, even though she made a lot of mistakes. Like, you know, she's what happened. And then, you know, with Avatar: The Last Airbender with Jet, the writers
Yeah.
did confirm that Jet died, y'all. So we gotta get out of that delusion. They said he did pass away. And I think I asked my mom about that, and I was just like, you know, what happens when you die? And I think that was like, I don't even know what happened with that conversation. She's just like, I think she probably like said, you know, you go to heaven, like, you know, that kind of type of thing. But it's like not something a child should have to worry about. But you know, that is the
Mhm.
reality for people. Unfortunately, that does happen. So I like the idea of having tools like video games or like Sesame Street or things like that to kind of start those conversations and give language to things that are very understandable and translatable for children who do experience those things, whether that's just for themselves or going through grief for a parent or a friend or something like that. And I really do think like season handled that very, very gently. um,
Yes.
so I just listen. The amount of research for like a lot of these like themes, like how much, because I know you're a PhD student, so like research is like pretty much your second language.
Yes.
But you know, as far as like your team is concerned, like how much research did it go into like these different things, like when it comes to, you know, representing characters, when it comes to dealing with grief, and when it comes to dealing like with a lot of themes that it touches on, how much research went into that?
Can I say a lot?
Yes, you can tell.
um, yeah, so we have an individual that we hired specifically for like inclusion,
Yeah.
who like she studied that at school and she does lectures on that. And we brought her in because we were like, we want to make sure that we're doing this correctly. And we want to make sure that we're doing this respectfully and that we make a good game that is good for people. So
Yeah.
we brought in an expert there. My expertise is again in like death and grieving. So I like at one point I was like, okay, why are the gravestones up at the top of the hill? Why are the gravestones in boxes up at the top of the hill?
Yeah.
And I had like this whole document on different ways of burial,
Yeah.
um, like built into things that we could understand like what the death practices would be in the valley.
Okay.
And then Kevin is constantly reading. Just he has like this thing on Discord right now that he calls his culture stream where he just posts like what he's reading and what poetry he's reading and what narrative, like it just it's everything
Yeah.
that he's checking out. And we make that openly accessible for the team for anyone who wants to read it.
Yeah.
um and it's the same thing with like the research that I do. I make openly accessible to everyone. And then some people just like bring in their expertise of things that interest them. And we're just constantly sharing knowledge, which I find to be really healthy and really interesting for the team because it's this interests me. We might use it, we might not use it, but here you go
Yeah.
if you would like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot.
That's good. You can tell though. You can tell. Like I said, I'm like in this game, if I had to pick like one theme like to describe season, it would be love. Like it's just you,
Mhm.
and it's not, it's love like from the characters, the you know, between them, but it's just like the love that went into the project. You can tell it oozes it. Like that love is the essence of this game, from all aspects. And the research paid off. The hard work paid off. And I love
Yeah.
that, you know, for areas that, you know, y'all, you said you didn't like, you needed expertise, you went out and sought that.
Mhm.
Because I know like when it comes to representation, often that isn't there. Or one thing I know, I went to a conference last year. But speaking on like consulting and things like that, it's good to have multiple consultants because you have different aspects or different things that can contribute, and then you can make the decision of what you want to include, and how you want to go about that. That's very important, and I hope more people in the gaming industry do that. Because you tell when it don't happen, but I really want that. I just feel like season has really set a standard when it comes to representation and giving characters and stories the love and attention that it deserves. Um, no pressure. That's just me. That's just how I feel. Y'all did it. Y'all did a really great job.
We did it. Yeah, this is my first game that I worked
Really?
on. Yeah, so this is my first game, my first team, and I remember being so scared going into the gaming industry. And like, my mom worked in the IT industry, and she's like, "It's cutthroat."
Mm,
And she was really worried about me because like she saw like all the articles on like how the
yeah.
industry is. And I lucked out with the sweetest team like I could have, like working with my manager Jane, and like I've already talked about like everything she's done for me, but
Yeah.
like it's even like things like I had a lot of health concerns while we were working on season, and like they would try and figure out like meals I could eat and like sending me recipes and making sure I
Aw.
was okay. And like sometimes they would come over and cook for me. And then like Kevin slowly teaching me how to write better because I'm really good on like the research writing. And then he's like, how do we move more into this poetry? How do we move more
Yeah.
into this? So it's just like the time they just put into each other to make each other better. And like I see it with other people too, where there's just so much care and like not a lot of competition.
Yeah.
And like I need to see more of that
Yeah.
in the industry where it's not trying to climb, and it's how do we make each other better so that we can make better things together.
Yeah. What is something that you feel that the industry could do better when it comes to having like things like diversity and inclusion?
I would say supporting new people in the industry.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get into the industry. It's very difficult to get into the industry.
Yeah.
I remember applying for a certain AAA company, uh,
Ooh.
about 7 times coming out of my master's program where I had my master's thesis specifically written on Far Cry. And I was like, I can talk about design mechanics, I can talk about feeling, I can talk about how all of that works together, and give me a chance. And it was rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection, and I didn't get a single job interview. And then I also got into a problem where people were like, "Oh, you have too much research interest. Like you have too much research experience. We won't hire you because you have research experience. You're too
Hmm.
academic."
Hmm.
So with that, I was like, "Okay, see, I don't have enough experience, but at the same time, I have too much research experience." And then I got hired at Scavengers. And then after that, I had people being like, "Hey, do you want to work for us? Hey, do you want to work for us? Hey, do you want to switch teams and come work for us?"
Yeah.
And that was just so upsetting to me because I'm sitting there, and I also was teaching at the university at the time, and I was just like, I see all my students who are putting their heart and soul into learning new things,
Yeah.
and they're going to go out there and they're not going to be given an opportunity
Yeah.
unless they know somebody. And generally, when there's not enough of a certain demographic already in that workplace, the likelihood that individuals know someone is very low.
Retweet.
Yeah. So you're then standing on the outside being like, what the hell do I need to do to get in? And it's just someone needs to take a chance on you.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous. So I just wish that there was more programs out there where people would say, you might not have what we need, but we're going to give you a chance to see what we can give you. And having more of those opportunities for collaboration, like is at my studio, where they turn to you and say, oh, you're the community manager, but you want to get in the narrative. How can we
Mm,
help you do that?
right.
And I want that to be more accessible to more people, because when I was teaching my first year students, they're like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, 18 years old. And I'm just looking at them being like, please, God, let this happen for them too.
Yeah.
Like, they have the passion. I don't want them to get old and bitter in a job that they don't care about.
Yeah. That's what I felt was happening to me, because I went when I graduated. So my undergraduate degree is writing and psychology, um, concentration in ethics and gender studies. I was like,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
that's really
And
cool.
I initially wanted to go into the gaming industry specifically for writing. And then I was told, oh, you have to get a master's degree. But then I was just like, what do I get a master's degree in? Because like in Jersey, there's not a lot of like there's not a lot of diversity and like or creativity in majors and things to study in. You would have to go out of state for that. And I am the poor.
Mhm.
So I chose higher education. And it was through higher education. I actually took a lot of counseling courses. So I was like, do I want to
Mhm.
be a counselor or do I want to? I don't know. But, and I ended up getting a job in higher education and I hated it. I felt my soul dying every single day. And it's just like, what would have happened if somebody would have taken a chance on me? I don't
Mhm.
know. Maybe it would have been worse. I don't know. But it's just like that does speak very true. And then it's also like, I know for me, like, being a Black woman, I never see myself anywhere. I know I speak about Aisha Tyler. She's the first Black woman I ever saw like in gaming, ever. And I was 21. I was
Oh my
like, it,
God.
yeah. And I was just like, I was like, oh, I could do it. Oh, okay. And after the pandemic, and I lost my job in higher ed because everything was closing. And you're
Yeah.
not bringing kids to the school. I was in admissions.
Mhm.
I found streaming, and then that's pretty much how I'm trying to like meander my way into finding what space what space do I want to be in, or what space do I want to create, honestly, too.
Mhm.
Because maybe it's not being under somebody, maybe it's something that isn't there yet that I can create. So that's definitely speaks true to power, because it's just that when I got to the who part, I'm like, I don't know nobody. I just got here.
Mhm.
It's very intimidating. I'm just like, oh, I thought you could just apply and do the thing. Okay.
Yeah, I thought you were just
Then
gonna read my resume,
I,
like normal jobs
yeah, after I fill out
do.
the application, it was like upload your application, but then fill out everything else by line.
Oh
I
my
hate
God,
that.
don't get me started.
I'm sorry. I brought up a traumatic experience.
Ah, I'm having flashbacks because I was also like, I finished my master's right before 2020 happened.
Ooh, yeah.
So I remember sobbing in a parking lot because I had just gotten the call that like I didn't get a job in Montreal. And I was just like in a parking lot in my 2000 Saturn, because I drove a really old car before I got here and had to give up my car.
Been there
And
too.
I called my mom and I was like, I don't think I can drive. And then after that, like everything shut down, and I was just like, that's it. I can't go meet anyone.
Yeah.
I can't go and do I can't do any of the networking things they want me to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it's also ridiculous that people are like, oh, go like pay for these classes, go pay for this, go pay for that, go pay to go to GDC so you can meet people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? We're not made of money. Like
Yeah.
I look at like our academics here at Concordia, like it's a great program, but again, it's like you need money
Yes.
to get here. And especially if you're an international student, you don't have access to the same grant programs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so many barriers that I'm like, are you kidding me? Like
Yeah.
it's so frustrating. And also being like now on the inside and still seeing it, and I don't want to be part of the problem now.
Yeah.
So you're just like, how do I fix it? How do
Right.
we fix it? And I feel like more people need to be asking that who have the resources.
Yeah.
Um, Hopefully we get the resources.
Yes.
Hopefully at my studio, but we're still pretty small. But it's
Yeah.
still like that hope, and I see that like desire in other people there, which really helps. Um, but yeah, it's just like how do we break down these barriers and get more voices and so that we get more interesting stories? Because there's only so many stories you can hear from like a tired old white guy.
Okay. One thing I will say, and I know I feel like I'm like singing y'all's praises, but like I feel like even though y'all are small, the impact you had with this game was very large.
Mhm.
And I hope more people pay attention. That's why I wanted to talk to y'all. and I am so glad to have this conversation with you because I wanted to put that out there. Not just, not just because it's Black History Month, but yes, it is Black History Month. Happy Black History Month. But to show that, like, again, when you put that love and that care into something, it can make something so beautiful. And hearing, what's going on behind the scenes, that just makes it even more better. Before we close out, I wanted to know, what would you tell somebody who's maybe like teetering on the line of playing a season A Letter to the Future? Because they're all in my TikTok comment section, and I'm just like, if y'all don't just play the game, but that's not enough. So, what would you say to people like that?
Play the game. Do it. Press the button. No, I think I would just say that this is the time that you need to take for yourself and allowing yourself to have that space to experience season and not going in with like any expectations of what you want to get out of the game. Like in a certain way, I sort of see season as a little bit of a moment of therapy.
Yes.
For the self, to have those moments of reflection, have those moments of quiet. And I feel like life is so busy that like you need to do that.
Yeah.
And you should do that.
Thank you so much, Megan, for your time. I appreciate it. I know I don't want to say like, is there something coming up next? But there's probably like 50 NDAs that you probably can't speak.
Yeah, there's like a wall in front of me of NDAs where I'm like, I want to say things. I can say people are working. They're working.
I'll ask this question. If it's NDA, just say it's NDA. There has been the other than question, should I play season? Will this experience come to the Switch?
There has been talks of it.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the technical aspects of it exactly because that's more of the programmer's wheelhouse.
Okay.
But I know that there's talks of it in the future.
Okay.
Coming.
That's fair. So y'all can stop asking me.
Yeah.
Because I don't go here for the people who are listening.
I'm not promising anything.
Yeah.
But we have heard the ask. We have heard people ask for it.
Yeah.
So we are not ignoring you. We're trying to see if it's possible.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Megan. And please play season A Letter to the Future now. Just play it. Please. Thank you so much.
I promise. You can pet a cow.
You can pet a cow.